this is Michelle from East Ave Art, and today I'm going to be painting this highly illustrative beach scene in gouache, so feel free to paint along with me. So I start just by putting in my horizon line, and then I do kind of a light sketch of where the beach will be placed and where some of the sand dunes will be with the greenery. And now I'm ready to mix up some of my paints. So my gouache is in these tubes, and I get this from Winsor and Newton. So I'm gonna mix up a couple different blues because I want some difference between the sky, the various portions of the sky, but also the ocean water. I want that to be a little bit different. And just one thing I'll say about my palette is you can see there's already some paint in there, but that is actually acrylic paint. So unlike gouache or watercolor, when more paint or more water gets applied in those wells where the acrylic is, it's not water activated, so it's not going to start coming up. But I was just kind of being lazy there. And then here you can see me putting washi tape around my sketchbook. And I'm just gonna take this brush that's a little bit more of a flat brush. It's kind of, I think it's called a mop brush. And I'm just going to start in with my dark blue at the top where the sky would be the darkest. And then I'm going to add my lighter blue that I've kind of mixed some white gouache in with. And I'm just gonna pull up that paint to meet it. So I think with gouache, you've got to really be, trying to blend your paints to get that sort of natural finish. It's pretty different from my typical medium, which is watercolor, where you kind of let like a lot of the water do the work for you to get nice blends. This, you have to sort of be really, I think, kind of mindful. And you can see like there, I need to kind of just keep going back and forth until I get sort of a smooth blend. I don't really like having a pretty solid line between my different colors. So I'm just gonna keep working on that until the values look correct to me. So I want the horizon line to be kind of the whitest, and then the top of the page to be the bluest, and is sort of like a gradient, kind of where they meet in the middle. I'm not sure if I ended up being super happy with the sky the way I did that, but it's one of my early attempts with gouache. I don't really have a whole lot of experience, so I'm just learning as I go. Now here I'm taking a pretty thin flat brush to make sure that I get that horizon line pretty straight. And I just dipped into it with my solid blue. And one of the things that I kind of decided was that I wanted to get a darker blue in the distance. So I started playing around with green and even a little bit of black. You can see I'm putting some black in my palette there. I will use black later in the painting, so this isn't quite all for naught to add black, but yeah, so I'm gonna do this mix of blue, green, and black to get a really dark color of the ocean in the distance, because when I laid down that dark blue, it just didn't really look differentiated enough from the sky to me. And so also, I'm kind of learning about mixing colors with gouache. So, the green and the black really sort of took over. And so I decided to add a little bit more blue into there in a different well that I'm working in there. And I think I ended up pretty happy with this. So I'm just kind of lay down this initial layer along my horizon line. And I'm using the flat brush because I think it's a little bit better than a round brush for getting that very sort of precise edge. I've tried doing ocean paintings like this in the past, and one of the things that I feel the most frustrated with is when I've used a round brush, I feel like I can't get that horizon line straight. So I think this was a way better approach for me. And as you can see, I switched to my round brush once I got the horizon line there. And now I'm playing around more with the color because I want some of the color in the foreground to be, you know, a more obvious blue. And so I'm gonna be pulling some of that very, very dark horizon line ocean color down and mixing it with this kind of almost more like turquoisey blue. And I kind of think I ended up being pretty happy with this effect. So this part took me a bit of time because I didn't want the horizon line that's, you know, the very darkest paint to be super thick, because it should be sort of like the furthest point away, and so that would be kind of thinner. So you can see I'm kind of trying to pull down the paint, and at various points I add in the two different ocean colors, and I just think it took a lot of playing around with. I'm assuming that's really just because of my newness and my inexperience with gouache. So I don't know if you have any suggestions for how to more efficiently paint. I'm all ears in the comment section. Please add your suggestions. So I'm going to give the ocean some time to dry, and now that my sky has dried, I'm going to add in some white gouache here, and this is just a solid white, and I'm putting in these puffy clouds, which is one of my favorite things about the way that the beach looks, is those like humongous puffy white clouds that are just so fun to look at. So I'm going to make some decisions about where I want to put the clouds and how big I want them to be. Sometimes I feel like this part is hard. You can see I'm kind of hesitating. But I think I ended up being happy with it. I'm not sure. I could have maybe put some more clouds in than I ended up with, but I think these ended up pretty cute. So now I'm going to just dip in just a touch into the black gouache and mix that in with the white and get this little bit of gray so I can put some shadows kind of more at the base of the cloud, because it wouldn't be kind of this pure white. So I'm just dabbing in some little like shadows at the base of the cloud here and there just to get a little bit of realism. I think this ended up being a really highly illustrative beach scene. It's not super realistic, but one of the things I like to do with my illustrations is add a touch of realism, and I think those clouds look kind of cool. So and then the other thing that you see me adding in here is a little bit of like little gray clouds off further in the distance. They're a little bit skinnier because they're further away, and they're a little bit hazier being gray like that. And then I decided to put one more sort of whiter, puffier cloud in, and then just some little scraps, some slice of clouds. I sometimes like those really thin ones too that you see in the distance to be mixed in with like the big puffy ones. All right, so I'm moving on to the beach, and I'm using ochre yellow to mix up a color for the beach. I think initially it was a little bit too intense of a brown that I painted on. I wanted sort of more of a golden sand, so you can see. And I just think that started too dark. I mean, granted, the sand that's closest to the water is going to be a lot darker because it's wet, but I really didn't love this color. One of the things you see me doing, though, is using the white space of the page for my benefit. So I'm going to leave a fair bit of that distance between where the ocean water ends and where my beach begins. And that's really going to be kind of representative of the white that you would see of the waves crashing. And so I really was very happy with that effect. And here I am getting the shadow in for the greenery and the plants that are on the sand dunes. I'm putting down sort of a green-black here, and I'm blocking out where I'm going to put like the seagrass, I guess is what you would call that, on the sand dunes leading to the beach. So it looks really bad right now, I think, but it'll make sense in a minute. One of the things to keep in mind about gouache, though, it's very opposite of watercolor. Watercolor, you start light and you kind of build up as you go, and gouache is kind of the opposite. So I'm putting the shadows in first of these plants, and then I'll go through and lighten it up as I continue to paint. So sometimes the consequence of that is you get kind of like a part where you feel like you're ruining the painting, which is definitely what I was feeling right now. So you can see I had kind of lightened up some of the sand in the foreground by putting more white into the ochre yellow. I'm gonna keep actually trying to lighten that up as this painting continues, especially in this section of the painting. I really changed my mind quite a bit about several approaches, and you'll see that as this kind of unfolds. But right now I'm mixing up sort of a dark green that's going to lay over the shadows here. So I'm going to paint in my darkest green, and I'm kind of just flicking up my paintbrush to get the long grass look that you see, in sand dunes. So in this part, I thought it would be cool to add little bits of grass that were just starting to grow in the sand. So they're just kind of more like sprouts. And I ended up really ruining that decision because I decided to do more work on the sand color and creating more shadow and highlights in the sand. And having that green there really messed me up because, like watercolor, gouache will reactivate it when you paint over it. So I kind of had to really play around until I could get the sand to not look green when I went and started working on this again. And I'll point out that part, but I'm just adding with my dark green more grass shapes. You can see like the little tops of the grass are going into the, covering up bits of the ocean. And I'm just, this is my first kind of layer of green, and I'll keep adding more layers as I go. Okay, so I'm mixing some yellow in with my green to get a lighter green to add another layer of texture and color into my sand dune grass. Okay, so this is the part where I made some pretty big changes. You can see I had already blotted out the little bits of grass, and I have this kind of weird greeny brown sand. And I want that section to be more shadow, the shadow that the grass, but also the difference in height, I guess, between the dunes and the pathway. I want that to show, so I really added a lot of white into my my sand color to kind of get this more highlighted pathway. And I'm trying to, just again show like the various heights of the sand, so that it looks a little bit more realistic. But again, you're really seeing me have to work with that green that kind of got muddied up with the with the sand, when I tried to paint over the little bits of grass that were there. So I'm really having to work through that, and it took me a long time. And again, a lot of paint. I feel like, unlike watercolor, I sort of waste more paint when I'm working in gouache, and I have a feeling that it's more due to my inexperience than something inherent with the medium. At this point, I kind of got a little sick of trying to deal with the sand, so I thought it would be good to go in with a little bit more of just the straight white, titanium white paint, and put a little bit of some highlights in my clouds, and that gave me something else to think about besides messing around with that sand that was really frustrating me at this point. And I recommend doing that when you're painting. If you're at a part where you're just really frustrated, just try something else. And then here I'm moving on and adding some more, highlighted grass, a little bit more yellow grass, so it pops out a little bit more. And then I also thought it would be fun to add some footprints. And I want to point this perspective aspect out. The footprints that are closest to the viewer are the largest, and then as it gets closer to the beach, the footprints get a little bit smaller, and that's a good way of showing your viewer perspective. And now that I've got most of the footprints kind of blocked out, I'm just going to dab in little divots here and there just to make it look as messy as a beach would look. I love painting this because it reminds me of the excitement that I used to feel going to Myrtle Beach. That was where my family did a lot of vacations, and just that excitement when you first see the ocean for the first time in a year, or whatever it is between the times that you go to the beach. It was just such an exciting thing to see it for the first time. So I'm gonna go back to trying to play around with the sand. I wanted to do a little bit of a brighter white as you have the dunes here on the side, and I felt like that would be a less, I guess, tapped down sand, so it might be a little bit of a lighter color because fewer people are walking on it. So that's why I chose to do that. And then I added some little bits of those little grasses back into it that were frustrating to me before. And here I am peeling off the tape, and that's going to reveal my final product. So I hope that you enjoyed watching this and that you will paint along with me. If you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe to see more. Thanks so much.